In this video, I am going to discuss the long distance transport of water and food. So, in the first video, we have discussed about translocation. So, translocation is the bulk movement of substances through the conducting tissues of plants. Then, here in long distance transport, water, minerals and food are generally moved by mass or bulk flow system. That means the materials will be moved from one point to another in a mass or bulk flow due to the difference in the pressure between two points. How do plants absorb water? So plants usually absorb water from the soil. In root hairs are there. Small finger-like structures are there in the root epidermis called root hairs. So root hairs that helps in the absorption of water from the soil. So in the root, millions of root hairs are there that will increases the area of absorption. So the water that enter inside the root through the root hairs by the process called osmosis. Once water is entered the root, the water will move through two pathways. So this is the structure of root hairs. You can see this is the epidermis. That epidermis, extension of the epidermis, that we call the root hairs. So inside the root, the water follows two pathways. It either passes through the apoplast pathway or it passes through the symplast pathway. If the apoplast pathway is, in that water will move through the cell walls and the intercellular spaces. Okay, the speed of this apoplast pathway which is having little more. Whereas in symplast pathway, the water will be moved through the plasmodesmata, through the cytoplasm. Okay, so this is the in apoplastic movement of water occurs exclusively through the intercellular spaces and the walls of the cell. Whereas here the neighboring cells are connected through cytoplasmic strands that extend through plasmodesmata. Okay, this movement is dependent on the concentration gradient. Okay. Then movement is through apoplast does not involve crossing the cell membrane, whereas the symplast pathway, the water crosses the cell membrane. So it is a slow process compared to apoplast pathway. And the movement of water in the endodermis and further it is always symplastic. You can see the picture showing the apoplast and symplast pathway. So apoplast, the water will be moved through the cell walls. It never crosses the plasma membrane or cell membrane. But when it will passes through and when it reaches the endodermis, due to the presence of Casparian strips, this water get inside the pericycle or it passes through the endodermis only through the symplastic pathway. Symplast pathway, the water will be moved through the cytoplasm. Here the connections are that we call plasmodesmata and it crosses the plasma membrane, and through the symplast in the endodermis also symplast pathway helps in the transport of water. This is already symplastic pathway. This is the diagram that shows how that water will be moved. In symplast pathway, the water movement is through the cytoplasm and crosses the cell membrane. Whereas in apoplastic pathway, the movement of water occurs through the intercellular spaces. Okay, so the resistance is less. Mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza means it is the association between fungi and the root of higher plants. Okay. This mycorrhizal association that help the plants to absorb the nutrients from the soil. Okay. So mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association. The fungal filaments form a network around the young root or they penetrate the root cells. These hyphae have very large surface area and that absorb mineral ions and water from the soil. In turn, the plant will gives nutrients to the fungi. So you can see the mycorrhizal association in plants. Okay. This plant will supply the food to the fungus, whereas the fungal hyphae, as it is having large surface area, it will help in the absorption of mineral ions and water. How water moves up a plant against gravitational force. We overthink that because water has to move to the tallest point of a tree. That is also against gravitational force. How that water reaches the tallest point. Okay, that's we are going to discuss. Okay, for that, once the water entered the deep into the root tissues through apoplast and symblast pathway, that water will be moved into the xylem. Okay. So in the xylem, some forces are there that will help in the upward transport of water. This first one, the xylem transport, that is by mass flow. It will be moved in bulk. This root pressure and the transpiration pull, that will help in the upward conduction of water. Then what is root pressure? Okay, so in that how root pressure will be developed. Outside in the soil, many ions are there. So the plant will absorb that mineral ions actively inside the cytoplasm of the root hairs. Okay, so the concentration of cytoplasm inside the root is more. So it will become a hypertonic solution. So water will automatically move from the soil to inside the root cells by osmosis. Then a pressure, once water will reach inside the root by osmosis, a pressure will be created, and that pressure we call the root pressure. So that root pressure, that will help in the upward movement of water to a certain limit. Okay. Then this root pressure theory, this theory was put forward by Priestley in 1916. This root pressure is a positive pressure that developed in the xylem sac of the root of some plants. Usually, this root pressure that helps in the upward conduction of water in herbaceous plants. Then this is a demonstration of root pressure. The potted plants, a herbaceous plant you have to take and you have to cut its stem. Then you have to insert a glass tube and with the help of rubber tubing and all. Then after some days, when you observe the glass tube, the water inside the glass tube rises. That is due to root pressure, because the root will absorb water from the soil and it will move up. That water will be collected in the glass tube. Then guttation. Guttation means it is the loss of water. It is the loss of water in the form of liquid through the minute openings of the plants. Okay, that openings are called hydathodes. So this loss of water in the liquid form in herbaceous plants through hydathodes is called guttation. So guttation we can observe in the early morning if you move around. Okay, through that grassy land you can feel small dews on that leaves. That is due to guttation. So guttation is mainly due to root pressure. Then you can see this picture that the margins, minute openings are there. That's called hydathodes. That through that hydathodes the water will be oozed out. That is due to root pressure at night. As there is no transpiration, root pressure, the pressure developed inside the root become more, and that will pushes that water out. Transpiration pull. The another force that helps in the upward conduction of water to the tallest point of a tree. You can see here, see the flow of water upward through the xylem plants can achieve high rates up to 15 meters per hour. So how it is possible? That is mainly because of the transpiration mode. So there is a theory that explains the upward conduction of water to the highest point of a tree. That's we call the cohesion, tension, transpiration pull theory. Then this theory was put forward by Dickson and Joly in 1894. Picture of Dickson is shown here. Then the transpiration driven ascent of xylem sap depends on the physical properties of water. So the physical properties like cohesion, adhesion, surface tension, all these factors that helps in the upward conduction of water. Cohesion means it is the mutual attraction between the water molecules, and adhesion is the attraction of water molecules toward the xylem tracheids. Then surface tension means water molecules are attracted to each other in the liquid phase more than to water in the gaseous phase. Then cohesion, adhesion and surface tension gives water special qualities. That's we call high tensile strength. Okay, so high tensile strength is the ability to resist a pulling force. So this is very good. High tensile strength that is formed due to cohesion, adhesion and surface tension, that will resist the pulling force. It has the ability to resist a pulling force. That means it can resist what the gravitational force. And also high capillarity. That means it is the ability of water to rise up in the small tubes. Okay. So the tracheary elements, they are small tubes. So through that tubes water will get inside due to high capillarity. Then transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water in the form of water vapor through the stomata. So you know that stomatas are usually present in the lower epidermis of leaves. Then based on that type of through which the transpiration occurs, transpiration is divided into three. They are cuticular transpiration. Transpiration occurs, a little bit of transpiration occurs through cuticles, and second one is lenticular transpiration. It occurs through the lenticels. Then the stomatal transpiration, that means the transpiration occurs through the stomata. So major part of the water is lost through the stomatal transpiration. Then this is the structure of stomata. Stomatic aperture, it is guarded by two guard cells. Okay, and when this guard cells swells up, the stomata opens. Then this is also having this guard cells. You can see the microfibrils are arranged in that special direction. That also helps in the opening and closing of guard cells. Then this stoma is the singular word is stoma and plural is stomata. This is the stoma of dicot leaf, and this is the stoma with the guard cells of monocot plants. Here the guard cells are dumbbell shaped, here the guard cells are bean shaped. Then opening and closing of stomata, how it occurs. Okay, so when during daytime, this water will get inside the guard cells. Then the guard cells swells up. Okay, and it will pulls away, and the stomatal pore will be open. Okay, during night the amount of water inside the guard cell is less, and the guard cells become flaccid and stomata closes. For the opening and closing of stomata, potassium ions are also helps in that, and also abscisic acid. Then functions of stomata, two functions stomata is having, that is one is transpiration, the other one is exchange of gases. Then transpiration is under the control of the factors that controls transpiration. We can group into two. They are external factors and internal factors. The external factors means outside factors. The internal factors mean that is factors seen inside the cell. So external factors, temperature, light, humidity and wind speed. These are the external factors that controls transpiration, the rate of transpiration. Whereas the internal factors are what are the number and distribution of stomata, the percentage of stomata that are open, then water status of the plant and canopy structure. That will be the internal factors. Then, what are the significance of transpiration? Usually the transpiration that helps in the transport of water and minerals in plants, and also it helps in the transport of water for photosynthesis, and it also cools the plant. It gives the cooling effect to plants, and it is then it maintains the shape and the structure of the plants by keeping the cells turned. Then transpiration, a necessary evil, as transpiration is needed whenever the stomata opens for gaseous exchange during respiration and photosynthesis. Automatically what also happens, the loss of water also happens. So the anatomy of the leaf is in such a way that transpiration is unavoidable. Okay. At the same time, transpiration is having some positive effects and also the negative effects. That is why Kurt is truly called that transpiration is a necessary evil. Then cohesion, tension, transpiration, pull model. So how that this is the model that explains how water reaches the tallest point. So these cohesion, adhesion and transpiration pull which lift the water column by creating a tension inside the xylem vessels. Okay. So water diffuses into the surrounding air because of lower concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere as compared to the substomatal cavity and the interstellar spaces in the leaves. So as water evaporates through the stomata, that's because transpiration results in the pulling of water into the leaf from the xylem. So transpiration that creates a suction or pulling force that will pull the water through the xylem. That's we call the transpiration pull. So ascent of the sap means the movement of water through the xylem. So here osmosis that pushes water into the root hairs. So a root pressure will be developed. Then the water will passes through the symblast and the apoplast pathway. It will reaches the xylem. And in the xylem, the water through the xylem, the water will be moved up due to the force like a capillary action, then adhesion, okay, cohesion, and also water when in the leaf, as when transpiration occurs, it will create a pulling force and that will pull the water to that place. Then this is the chart that shows the flow of water. Transport of water from root to leaves. So here water in the ground goes to the root, that is from in the root hairs are there, absorb the water, and from there the root will goes to the water will goes to the root cortex, and then it is pulled up by xylem vessels. Upward movement of water through the xylem occurs. Then water reaches the cells in the leaves and diffuses through the stomata of the leaves by transpiration. Then transpiration and photosynthesis are complements. Then photosynthesis is limited by the water available in the plants, which is depleted by transpiration. So as a result, the guard cells become flaccid and close the stomata, thereby reducing the supply of carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. When the stomata closes, then there is no exchange of gases. The plant will not get sufficient carbon dioxide. For that, plant has found out another mechanism, that is the evolution of C4 mechanism of photosynthesis can be considered as a strategy for minimizing water loss and maximizing the availability of carbon dioxide. Then, how plant will uptake mineral ions? Okay, so mineral ions are also absorbed from the soil by passive or active transport. Okay. So most of the mineral must enter the root by active absorption into the cytoplasm using energy in the form of ATP. Okay. Then these minerals are present in the soil. Why active transport? Because the minerals are present in the soil as charged particles which cannot move across the cell membrane. Is one reason. And the second one is the concentration of minerals in the soil is usually lower than the concentration of minerals in the plant cells. So plants are having high concentration of minerals and the soil is maybe having less. So it should be transported from a low concentrated area to high concentrated area using anaerobic. That is why it is active absorption. Then, so uptake of mineral ions shows here. So there are also specific proteins in the membranes of root hair cells that actively pump the ions from the soil to the cytoplasm. Okay, from the like all the cells, the endodermal cells will have many transport protein embedded in their plasma membrane. They let some solutes to cross the membrane but not others. So transport proteins of the endodermal cells are control points. Okay, so where a plant adjusts the quantity and type of solutes that reach the site, there is the adjustment. Which these ions are needed or which one is not needed, it can be controlled in the endodermis. There the transport proteins are there. Then the root endodermis, because of the layer of suberin, has the ability to actively transport ions in one direction only. So root endodermis will transport the ions in one direction only. Then translocation of minerals ions, we have to discuss about mobilization of mineral ions. Okay. So in there, usually the place where the mineral ions are needed in a plant, that we call the chief seat. Okay, so a chief seat for mineral ions is usually the growing regions of the plant. Okay, such as apical, lateral, meristem, end leaves, all that portions of the plant usually needs more mineral ions. So that area we usually call the chief seats. So mineral ions are how it will be mobilized. So mineral ions are frequently remobilized, particularly from the older portions of the plant to the younger portions. So a plant is, a leaf is going to fall. Before it fall, the whatever nutrients will be, mineral ions will be there, that will be remobilized to the younger regions. And in case of deciduous plants, okay, so there also before leaf fall, they will remove all the minerals. Okay, then there are some minerals that cannot be mobilized. So that elements are actually calcium. Calcium is unable to mobilize because it is the part of structural component of the cell. Whereas the minerals like phosphorus, sulfur, nitrogen and other minerals can be readily mobilized. Then phloem transport. So the phloem helps in the transportation of prepared food. Prepared food here means by photosynthesis plants will produce the glucose. Okay, that glucose is immediately converted into sucrose, and the sucrose will be translocated from the leaves to various parts of the plant. Okay, so here in that case the source in phloem transport, the source is leaves. Okay, from there the sucrose will be carried into the sink. Okay, but during the scarcity of time, what the source may become the stored food regions where the food will be stored, maybe root or stem or leaves. So from there the food will be transported. So in that time the stored food regions, that means root, stem or leaves, that become the source and the sink become the leaves or some other parts. So this is the phloem transport. We can see here this glucose moves up to the, here this is water and mineral from the soil that reaches the leaf. By photosynthesis leaf will produce the glucose. So that glucose, it will be immediately converted into sucrose and it will be transported to various parts of the plant. So here the transport of materials through the phloem is explained by a theory that is called pressure flow or mass flow hypothesis. Okay, this is the most accepted mechanism used for the translocation of sugars from source into seed. Okay, so how it occurs? The movement of sugar in the phloem that begins at the source. That means usually the source will be the leaf. Okay, then from that leaf, this sucrose that will be absorbed by the companion cells. From that companion cells, it will be loaded into the phloem, okay, seed tubes, by active transport. Once the sucrose molecule will be get inside the seed tubes, phloem tissue, there the water potential become less. That means the phloem sap become a water from the xylem and neighboring cells that will automatically enter into the sieve tubes. Then that sucrose along with that water that will be called phloem sap that will move from the higher concentrated area to the lower concentrated area. So this picture that shows it clearly. So here you can see the source, that is the leaf cells. From there sucrose is actively transported to the companion cells of the phloem tissue, and from there it will be taken up by the sieve tubes, that is also by active transport. And so once here the solute concentration of the sucrose is more, water will be moved from the neighboring cells and also from the xylem tissues, and it will be loaded in that phloem tissues. So then automatically the food will be moved from that source to sink where the food is needed. And at the sink, when the food reaches the sink, the sucrose will be actively absorbed by the cells, in the sink. So once the sucrose will be actively absorbed by the sink cells, here the solution become hypotonic. Water concentration become more, so the water molecules will move from here to back to xylem and the neighboring cells. So why sucrose is transported and not glucose? Usually by photosynthesis the plant will produce the glucose. Okay, then why the plant is not transporting glucose? Instead they are transporting sucrose. So there some reasons are there. The one reason is increased energy storage. Sucrose is a disaccharide, whereas glucose is a monosaccharide. So if the sucrose is having, it can store more energy. And also the efficient energy transfer, as it is a disaccharide and it can be moved from one place to another. So more energy it carries. Okay. Then as the glucose may be reactive. So during the transport of glucose there may be some reactions takes place. So but the sucrose is less reactive. So there is no reaction takes place during the transport. Okay. And also sucrose is having low viscosity. And sucrose here you can see the non-reducing sugar. Okay, that means it is not oxidized. It is not oxidized into another compounds. Then why starch is not stored? Starch is storing, not glucose and not sucrose, because the glucose is osmotically active and it will increase the osmotic pressure inside a cell, and that will lead to physiological water imbalances. So hence glucose is not stored but starch is stored. Here is an experiment that shows that food is transported mainly through phloem and not through the xylem. That's the Girdling experiment that gives the proof that food is transported through the phloem only and not through the xylem. So in the Girdling experiment, what we have to take a branch or a plant, branch of a tree or a plant you have to take, and you have to remove the bark from that plant. Okay, you have to remove only the bark from that plant and not cause any harm to the xylem. Okay, then you keep it there for few days, and after few days you can see that the swollen portions just above that place where the bark is removed. Okay, so this swelling is mainly due to the deposition of food, the collection of food there. Okay, so that experiment proved that the phloem transport food and not the xylem. Thank you.